You're on mute.
Yeah, it would help if that mute button wasn't so small. Good evening, fellow Toastmasters. Really appreciate the time tonight to speak. It's been a long time since I was actually able to join because of all my travels for work. Tonight's speech is basically my observation of the entire pathway process associated with my particular pathway, but really it's more of a critique associated based on my observations going through several pathways. And in Toastmasters, we generally aspire to speak like Churchill and stand like Lincoln, which is a book written a few years ago. And we take the formal process of good speakership and leadership hand in hand, because good leaders are able to communicate effectively and in some ways also efficiently. And there's also a general focus on more formal types of speeches. And in the Pathways process, we're given tips and tricks and techniques of the trade and a few hacks to train and learn ways to become better communicators and to lead. But I was actually very disappointed with the Engaging Humor's Pathways because I felt short-shrifted when I did feel that taking the path less traveled in Engaging Humor, and I didn't think it was an anomaly when I actually went down this path to learn to take a more nuanced art of the humor in speech. And we all know humor and comedic speaking is very hard. And think about it. Not everyone can be funny. If you think about the comedic greats, Joan River, Lenny Bruce, Carlin, or even Pryor. And if you think about Carlin as the brain and consciousness of comedy, and even Pryor as its guts and its heart. And to paraphrase Jerry Seinfeld, that Pryor is referred to as the Picasso of the comedic profession. Will Pryor ever be topped? And I really wanted to learn and really get immersed into humor and to be able to think like Carlin and to feel like Pryor, and how to learn and feel and do like these comedians do when taking this pathway. And honestly, I felt short-shrifted because I go back and reflect upon the various paths I've taken prior to this current pathway, and it seems to be very formulaic. And as a learning module, when you're learning to find ways to weave in humor into speeches, this pathway is pretty basic. It just provides you with kind of a fundamental mechanics. Specifically, what I described in terms of basics centers on just a few observations while taking not only this pathway, but any other pathway module over the past few years. The paths seem very linear. The learning components are quite, like I said, formulaic, very component development. And I don't know if that is something that's just attributed to being given to every man or every woman or every person within Toastmasters as a building block approach, as more of an elementary approach. But if we're ever to grow as Toastmasters, we need to really rethink the education and critical thinking and creativity in the educations of our Toastmasters going forward. So we got to find the right balance in terms of science and art and creativity, in terms of the aspects that we can do when we're learning So if I was ever to critique not only this pathway, but others, my big first critique is to actually find a way to conduct a baseline, because everyone learns differently. We're each at a different level of maturity in speaking. Menashe and Scott and Andy, Rachel, Jennifer, Debbie, myself, others, we're all at different levels of maturity when it comes to different types of speeches. So what are our pathways? We should be able to take an initial baseline to really zone in on that level of maturity and then go up from there. Because the one size fits all approach, what I call the equality approach, may not work for all of us. Now, if you're learning to speak at the very basic level, sure, but you need to be baseline towards that. And that's the building block approach. But if you're a little bit more seasoned, it shouldn't be that type of approach or one size fits all. It needs to be a more curated and customized approach. So conduct a baseline based on where we are in terms of maturity, and then build a component type of customized pathway to address the gaps or seams in your learning, and then fill those activities and electives in your path on specifically those areas where you need to improve. Take that maturity model approach, match the need to the relevance, because Toastmasters need to learn at the speed of relevance at different levels. I'm a spatial thinker, I'm a spatial learner. I want to be able to just zip in and out and not take that formulaic approach. I want to be able to have a Lego approach and take different pieces from different areas and be creative. When I take a look at the equality approach that we're currently at, everyone's given the same tricycle, but some of us are actually not necessarily at the tricycle level. Some of us are probably at a mountain bike level or at a road bike level. So what I'm really asking for is equity. Equity in our education for Toastmasters. Because I think, actually, I should stop saying that. I know, based on the few years I've been at Toastmasters, that we are being short shrifted in some ways with the current pathway. So developmental approach needs to be rethought. So think about this, customizing, one size does not fit all. The science and art and creativity needs to come together. But back to the elements of stand-up comedy. What did I actually learn when it came to this specific pathway? If you think about stand-up comedy, the ability to deliver, it consists of many different parts. And there's actually, if you get down to the genesis of it, it has three main parts, three primary essential parts to comedic delivery, especially when you're doing it as woven in as part of your speech. The first portion is basically the setup, pretty much informational. It's not really funny. It's not really an essential part of the joke. However, it sets up the stage. It's a little bit of the story, a little bit of the background, just gets the audience a little bit captivated into that first portion, just the foundational aspect of what you're trying to deliver. The second piece that's actually not covered in this module is the actual delivery of the punchline. It's not really delved into in the module, because this is all about the funny lines or the parts of lines that generate laughter from the joke. It's like glossed over. And I feel that the punchline as a counterpoint to the setup lines, that's key. because that's where timing and delivery are the crux. And this is where the art and science of humor is missing from this module, from this pathway. And then finally, if you want to be consistent in the humor of your speech, you want to focus on the continuity, the taglines, the follow-on punchlines, or the additional context, which are pretty much anything verbalized after the initial punchline within your joke. I want to be able to circle back into that common thread. Pryor was very good at doing that in that story, that common theme. Eddie Murphy was very good about some common themes. Chris Rock, so on, others. So every comedian develops that act that's specific to them, that's unique to them. If we're able to do that as Toastmasters and not have such a formulaic approach, but one that's customized, a pathway that goes into more in delivery, more into timing, more into things that we should consider, and that's actually more spatially and creative and more not an anomaly, then we can become better speakers and become more effective. Thank you.